Imagine for a moment what your life would be like if all the doors you so deeply desire were to open before you. Job opportunity, the restored relationship, the inner peace you've been seeking. Now, visualize these blessings flowing naturally into your life. But what if I told you that the secret to these doors opening lies not just in your efforts, but in one powerful action, putting God first? In this devotional, we will discover together how, by giving God the place of honor and priority, the right doors will begin to open in ways you never imagined. Because when we place God at the center, He not only guides us along the way, but also grants us access to opportunities, blessings, and miracles that were beyond our understanding. Prepare your heart. Today, we will learn how this simple yet profound choice can completely transform your life. How many times, in the silence of our souls, do we feel the weight of unmet expectations? We make plans, invest time, energy, and place our hope in results that always seem to slip through our fingers. Feeling of frustration begins to grow, and what should be a journey toward our dreams turns into a constant battle, where victory seems distant. Our instinct in this struggle is to try harder, persist with the same strategies, double our efforts, as if we are in a maze that depends solely on our skill to find the way out. And that's when anxiety creeps in. We feel that we are in control of everything, and, at the same time, lost amidst the chaos we have created. Now, stop and think. How many of these attempts have been made with God at the forefront? Not just superficially, asking Him for a quick blessing or a temporary solution, but truly inviting Him to be at the center of our decision. When we rely solely on our own ability, we are limited by what we can see and understand. But what we forget is that God not only sees the whole picture, He already knows the ending from the beginning. Putting God first means letting go of the illusion of control and recognizing that, as much as we try, our vision is limited. It's not about giving up on our dreams, but aligning our desires with the will of someone who knows what is truly best for us. It's allowing Him to open the right doors at the right time and guide our steps according to a much larger plan than we can imagine. This is the key to easing the tension of the journey and experiencing the peace that comes from knowing we are not alone. God never asks us to bear the entire burden. He calls us to release the weight, trust, and walk beside Him, knowing that He will open the right doors when we are ready. And the question remains, are we truly ready to let God take the lead? God has always been present, calling us to a life where He is at the center. From the beginning, He invites us to live in a way that reflects His sovereignty in everything. But to experience this, He must occupy the first place in our hearts. Not second, not third, first. And this is not just a matter of devotion. It is a matter of spiritual alignment. When we look at the Scriptures, we see this call repeatedly. But seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Matthew 6:33. It is not a suggestion, it is a promise. God asks us to seek His presence and place His purposes above all things. He guarantees that by doing so, everything we need, and even what we desire, will be taken care of. The key is in the order. God first. Putting God first is more than a religious practice or a daily moment of prayer. It is a way of life. When you make an important decision, who do you consult first? When you face difficulty, who do you turn to first? When you dream about the future, are your ambitions aligned with God's purpose? These questions reveal the place God occupies in our hearts. God desires to be ahead of our choices, at the top of our priorities, because He knows that only then will we be at the center of His perfect will. He calls us to trust that, by letting Him lead, the path will be illuminated. And here's the great mystery. When God is put first, everything else naturally finds its place. The right doors open, not by our insistence, but by divine movement. This is the call. God is constantly knocking on the door of our hearts, inviting us to place Him ahead of our plans, our concerns, and our dreams. He wants us to trust that His vision, which is infinite and perfect, will always guide us to the best. And as we accept this call, something extraordinary happens. We experience a peace that surpasses all understanding and witness the right doors opening supernaturally. Putting God first requires more than a conscious decision. requires trust, and this trust is often where we are challenged. Trust means surrendering our greatest concerns, fears, and desires into the hands of someone who, though invisible, is more present and more capable than anyone else. But for this surrender to be genuine, we need to believe that He knows what is best, even when we cannot understand why things are the way they are. And here is the central point. By trusting in God and prioritizing Him, we are declaring that His wisdom is greater than ours. We are saying that even when life does not make sense, even when doors remain closed longer than we expected, we believe that He has something better prepared. Trusting in God teaches us patience. In times when nothing seems to move, when the wait is long and anxiety tries to creep in, it is our faith that sustains the decision to prioritize God. It's not easy, as our human tendency is to want control and immediate answers. But true trust is maintained in moments of silence, during nights when answers don't come, and in prayers that seem unheard. When we put God first, we are affirming that we prefer to wait for the doors He will open in His perfect timing, rather than forcing doors that were not meant for us. Forcing a wrong door, no matter how attractive it may seem, can lead us down paths of frustration, disappointment, and exhaustion. What many forget is that by prioritizing God and fully trusting Him, He is not only preparing the right doors, but also preparing us to pass through them. Sometimes the doors we are waiting for can only be opened when we are ready. It is in this time of waiting and trust that God shapes our character, patience, and faith. Therefore, when you put God first, not only should you expect the right doors to open, also expect to be transformed in the process. For trusting in God is, above all, allowing Him to make us people capable of walking in His promises. If we look at the Scriptures, we see countless examples of men and women who decided to put God first, and how that decision transformed their lives in unimaginable ways. These figures were not perfect, but they did something that changed the course of their stories. They trusted in God above their circumstances. Let's start with Abraham. God called him to leave his land, his family, everything he knew, to follow an uncertain path towards a distant promise. Abraham did not know where he was going, but he chose to put God first, even in the face of uncertainty. And what happened? God not only fulfilled the promise by giving him a son in his old age, but also made him the father of many nations. Abraham learned that by placing God at the center, even the impossible becomes possible. Now think of Joseph, sold into slavery by his own brothers. It seemed that all doors in his life had closed, was betrayed, forgotten, and wrong. But even so, he remained faithful to God. Joseph trusted that, no matter how much he did not understand what was happening, God was in control. And in the right time, a door he could never have imagined opened, from prisoner to governor of Egypt. God honored Joseph's faithfulness, opening doors that changed the course of an entire nation. Another powerful example is David. As a young shepherd, he was chosen by God to be king of Israel. But before this came to pass, he faced years of persecution and trials. Instead of forcing his way to the throne or seeking shortcuts, David placed his trust in God and waited. Even when he had opportunities to end Saul's life, the current king, he refused, saying, "I will not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed." And it was this trust that led David to the throne at the right time, when God opened the door in a definitive and undeniable way. These biblical examples teach us something profound. Prioritizing God not only opens doors, but also redefines our path. When we make God the center, He not only guides us, but also shapes our story according to His perfect plan. And looking at these lives, we realize that trusting in God and putting Him first is not just a matter of faith, it's a strategy to live in the fullness of His promises. What these characters show us is that even in the most adverse circumstances, God does not abandon those who prioritize Him. He works in the invisible, behind the scenes, preparing doors that will transform their lives forever. But what happens when we do not put God first? When we allow other priorities, our plans, desires, or even fears to take control? It is at this point that we begin to face obstacles, doors that seem eternally closed, or worse, doors that open to paths that do not lead us to the fullness we seek. The world offers us countless shortcuts. We are constantly tempted to prioritize immediate success, momentary gratification, or human recognition, all at the expense of our communion with God. It might be a career that absorbs all our attention, leaving little or no space for prayer or meditation on the Scriptures. It might be relationships that take the place of our devotion, where we seek security in people instead of in the Lord. Or even our own dreams, which, while good, may lead us away from the greater purpose God has for us. These choices, although they may seem small, have the power to drastically change the course of our lives. When we place something or someone above God, we begin to distance ourselves from His direction. And here's the truth. No matter how hard we insist, no matter how much we struggle to open the doors we desire, if God is not at the center, those doors may lead us to paths of frustration and emptiness. Have you ever stopped to think about how many times you've pursued something with all your might, only to end up disappointed? The fact is, the doors we open with our own strength, without God's blessing and direction, may lead us to places where we are unprepared to be. Or even worse, they may take us away from what God truly has prepared for us. It's like climbing a ladder and upon reaching the top, realizing that the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. Another major obstacle is fear. Often, out of fear of the future, fear of losing something or someone, we fail to trust that God has the best for us. And this fear leads us to make hasty choices, open doors that were not prepared by Him. Fear distorts our perception, making us believe that we need to take control, as trusting in God seems too risky. God, in His infinite patience and grace, invites us to reorder our priorities. He reminds us that as long as we put our interests above His purpose, we will be stuck in cycles of failed attempts. What we need is the courage to let go, to trust that He is working on our behalf, even when we do not see immediate result. Putting anything above God creates spiritual barriers that prevent us from seeing the right doors opening. However, when we place Him in His rightful place, on the throne of our lives, everything begins to align. Opportunities that once seemed distant start to manifest, and what was confusing begins to make sense. True freedom and fulfillment begin when we recognize that no other priority can bring us what God can. And by removing these obstacles, we position ourselves to see the extraordinary happen. Aligning our lives to prioritize God may seem like a challenging task, especially in a world that constantly pulls us in opposing directions. However, there are practices and habits that, when incorporated into our daily routine, help us keep God at the center of our lives. Let's explore some of these practical steps to effectively put God first. Firstly, establish a routine of prayer and meditation. Prayer is our primary means of communication with God. Setting aside daily time to speak with Him, hear His voice, and seek His guidance is essential. Start and end your day with prayer, asking God to guide your actions and decisions. Meditation on the Scriptures, where you reflect on God's promises and teachings, helps align your heart with His will. Secondly, prioritize Bible reading. The Word of God is the map that guides us on our journey. Set aside time to read and study the Bible regularly. It's not just about reading, but about seeking understanding and practical application of the Scriptures in your life. Bible reading constantly reminds us of who God is and what He desires for us. Additionally, get involved in a Christian community. Being surrounded by other believers strengthens our faith and helps us maintain the right perspective. Join a Bible study group, participate in a ministry, or get involved in church activity. These relationships provide support, encouragement, and accountability, helping us keep God at the center. Another crucial step is to regularly set and evaluate your priorities. Examine how you are spending your time and energy. Ask yourself if your actions and decisions align with God's values. Evaluating your priorities helps identify areas where you might be putting other things ahead of His will and make necessary adjustments. Make intentional choices that reflect God's will. In every decision, whether big or small, ask yourself, does this decision honor God? Is it aligned with His principles? By making conscious choices to live according to divine will, you will be prioritizing God's presence and guidance in your life. Additionally, practice gratitude and contentment. Often, we get distracted by the desire for more, which causes us to lose sight of what we already have. Thanking God for His blessings and being content with what He has already given us helps us maintain a healthy perspective and recognize His providence in our lives. Finally, be willing to let go of control. Putting God first means trusting that His plans are better than our own. Be open to changes and adjustments in your life that God might be directing. This may involve setting aside personal ambitions or dreams that are not aligned with His purpose for you. Aligning our lives to prioritize God is an ongoing process. It's not about achieving instant perfection, but about a continual journey of putting God first in every aspect of our life. Each small choice to obey and trust in God builds a solid foundation for experiencing His promises and seeing the right doors open. Prayer is not just a religious practice. It is a transformative force that can shape and direct our lives in deep and impactful ways. When we put God first, prayer becomes the channel through which we seek His guidance, share our desires, and experience His intervention in our lives. When we pray, we are, in fact, entering into direct communion with the Creator of the universe. It is an act of humility and dependence, where we recognize our need for His guidance and help. Prayer allows us to surrender our worries and fears to God, trusting that He is listening and working on our behalf, even when we do not see immediate results. Prayer is also a powerful tool for aligning our hearts with God's will. Through prayer, we seek to understand what God desires for us and ask for His will to prevail over our own desires. It is in prayer that we find clarity and peace, and where we learn to trust in divine direction, even when the paths are not clear. Moreover, prayer strengthens us spiritually. In times of uncertainty and difficulty, prayer anchors us, gives us courage, and renews our strength. When we put God first and seek His presence through prayer, we find a safe refuge amidst the storms of life. Prayer reminds us that we are not alone. God is with us, listening to every cry and responding according to His perfect wisdom and love. Practice of prayer should not be seen as a formality or obligation, but as an intimate and constant conversation with God. It is through this conversation that God reveals His plans and purposes for our lives, gives us discernment, and prepares us for the doors He is about to open. When we pray, we ask Him to guide us, give us wisdom to make decisions, and open our eyes to see the opportunities He has prepared for us. Additionally, prayer has the power to transform our perspective. When we turn to God in prayer, we are invited to see our situations from His eternal perspective. This shifts our approach and helps us face challenges with faith and hope, knowing that God is working on our behalf. Therefore, prayer is more than just a practice. It is a living and dynamic relationship with God. When we dedicate time and effort to pray and seek His face, we allow His influence to permeate all areas of our lives. Through prayer, God opens doors, guides us, and provides the strength needed to walk in His will, thus experiencing the promises and blessings He has for us. Throughout history and in our daily lives, we find numerous testimonies of people who chose to put God first and experienced extraordinary transformation. These stories are not mere accounts, but living demonstrations of how prioritizing God can open doors and lead to unexpected blessings. Consider the story of a young woman named Anna, who grew up in an environment of great financial instability. Despite the challenges, she decided to trust God and place His will above her own ambition. Anna dedicated time to pray and seek divine guidance in every decision she made. She made a point of serving others and maintaining integrity in her work, even when it seemed challenging. Over time, Anna witnessed a series of opportunities that arose as a result of her faithfulness. She received a job offer that seemed like a distant dream, and saw her financial situation stabilize in a surprising manner. Anna realized that by putting God first, He had not only met her needs, but also blessed her in ways beyond her imagination. Another example is Marcos, a businessman facing a crisis in his company. Instead of relying solely on market strategies and temporary solutions, Marcos decided to place God at the center of his decisions. He began to pray regularly for wisdom and guidance, and committed to using his company as a platform to serve others and glorify God. The transformation was remarkable. The business, which was on the brink of collapse, began to thrive in unexpected ways. Marcos found new markets, formed significant partnerships, and experienced growth he had never anticipated. He attributes these achievements to his decision to prioritize God, which brought not only financial success but also deep personal and spiritual satisfaction. Laura's story is equally inspiring. Laura was struggling to find purpose and direction in her life. After several attempts to follow her own plans and achieve her personal goals, she decided to completely surrender her aspirations to God. She began seeking divine guidance and trusting in His timing. Laura started working in a local ministry and, through this, discovered a calling she had never considered before. Her life took a turn that brought her not only satisfaction, but also a positive impact on her community. Laura testifies that by putting God first, she found a purpose that surpassed her expectations and discovered a deeper sense of meaning in her existence. These testimonies demonstrate that putting God first is not a distant theory, but a practical and transformative reality. When we allow God to be the center of our lives, we experience His promises in tangible ways. Opens doors that were once closed, guides us to unexpected opportunities, and blesses us in ways that surpass our understanding. These stories are a powerful reminder that God honors the faithfulness of those who prioritize Him. He is always ready to lead and bless us when we put His will before our own. The decision to place God first not only transforms our lives, but also testifies to the greatness and faithfulness of His love. As we come to the end of this devotional, the message we want to leave is clear. Putting God first is the key to a life of abundance and purpose. By prioritizing Him, we are not only seeking spiritual alignment, but also opening doors to a future filled with possibilities and blessings that God has prepared for us. The path to putting God first begins with a personal and conscious decision. It is a daily choice to surrender our worries, plans, and dreams to Him. It is recognizing that, without His guidance, our own strength is limited and often ineffective. Placing God at the center transforms our perspective, aligning our desires with His eternal purpose and allowing us to see the right doors opening as we trust in His wisdom. You may be at a crucial decision point, facing a challenge, or simply seeking greater clarity in your life. Now is the time to reflect and take action. Ask yourself, am I putting God first in all areas of my life? Am I seeking His guidance in my daily decisions? If the answer is not fully affirmative, don't despair. The journey to prioritize God is ongoing and filled with grace. Here are some practical actions you can start implementing today. Dedicate time daily to prayer and Bible reading. Make this an unwavering habit, starting and ending your day with God. Allow His Word to guide your decisions and His presence to be your refuge. Evaluate your priorities. Reflect on how you are spending your time and energy. Make necessary adjustments to ensure that God has a central place in your life. Seek fellowship with other believers. Engage in a Christian community that can support and encourage you in your walk. Join study groups, ministries, or other activities. Keep you connected to God and His purposes. Trust God and surrender your fears. Release excessive control and surrender your concerns to God. Trust that He is working on your behalf, even when you don't see immediate results. Be open to change and spiritual growth. Allow God to shape your life and dreams, according to His will. Be willing to adjust your plans as needed. Remember, putting God first is not a one-time act, but a journey of faith and trust. Each step you take in this direction not only opens doors to new opportunities, but also transforms your life in profound and lasting ways. I invite you to take a moment now to commit to putting God first. Whatever challenge you are facing, surrender it to God and trust that He is ready to guide and bless you in ways you cannot imagine. Experience the power of His presence and see how the right doors begin to open in your life. God is waiting to act on your behalf. Give Him first place and witness the wonder of His providence and love.